Thank you for those verses and the help for all of us, and maybe thinking of turning to the Lord all the time, whether we're giving praises or whether we're asking for help. Last week I said I would probably continue somewhat on the idea of the third angel's message. And it was all of chapter Revelations 13 last week. There's a couple of verses in chapter 14, Revelations 14, that we'll get today. But there's verses all over the place that are really helpful to me. And of course, I've been studying for the Sabbath School lessons, making Sabbath School lessons. And of course, Pearl's typing and then I'm proofreading, and then she's typing again and then proofreading again. And I wonder if I write them all out. I can't proofread my own sometimes. It's not, just doesn't work. You don't see your own mistakes. And so we've been doing a lot of back and forth work on those. And I started on the sermon for today, and I got into the same problem. Too much information, you might say. And what do I cut out? What do I put in? And so I want to let you be assured that I'm looking at all kinds of stuff, just interesting stuff. Here's a paper that is on the same subject, but Daniel first in here, and then some of the third angel's message and so on, other statements. And I got glancing over it because it was in with other papers. Then I got to the bottom, it says L period C period. L. Christensen. How old is that? Pretty old. And I made sure I hung on to it. I found some other sheets as well, way back. Here's an article that's on this subject. It's called The Seven Trumpets by John Keyes. He's passed away a long time ago, and this was from the Bible Advocate in February 1967. Is God the same yesterday, today, and forever? And the material that he wrote was good way back, and I've got a lot of his materials around. So I've been really happy. And he showed the 7 seals, and then the 7 trumpets, and then the 7 plagues. And he talked about the 7, so that got me going. And I thought, are there other 7s in the Bible? Well, that was easy to find. There was a lot, so I have to tell you about that. So what's interesting when we're looking at it, without even going any further in what was written in this, I don't see any special marks or tags, but the 7th seal seems to be all of the next thing that's coming. So you don't have 7 finished and then you start with the number 1 of the next. It's the 7th seal that becomes all of the 7 trumpets. That makes it a little easier when you're studying. And the last of the trumpets, the 7th trumpet, is all of the things that follow it, and it's the 7 plagues. 7 plagues. So that eases down on how you measure and how you're counting. But we'll have a little more on counting. You know, I love numbers, and I got into numbers in the Bible, particularly in number 7, because it's 7 plagues and so on, 7s. So I really got into that. But before I go a little further there, I want to remind you that these books are still available. They're kind of coming apart a little bit. We got this for our wedding anniversary. Wedding present. This is the new Bible Home Instructor. So you might be looking for that, and it's got a gift writing in the front of it. This is copyrighted 1946. Do they still teach the same doctrines? Well, that's debatable. But this book is still what I love. And it sure matches with 1988 that we deem this church as the beginning of this group. And the materials that was taught all along was based on the teachings of 1988. And I figured by that time they probably should have had it figured out. 70 ministers studying all those years should have had it figured out. So we're very happy with the idea that our teachings come from 1988. with very little adjustments to it. Might as well say it now while I'm here. The only two adjustments that come to mind quickly is the military service, so that if somebody could not serve, did not want to serve, couldn't serve for religious reasons or other reasons, that they have a backing. They have a way of saying, this is my standard of life. And I actually have done a lot of reading about that this week. Other things that you pledge to do or don't have to pledge. The Pledge of Allegiance to the country, you can actually modify a number of things, and it's still valid, still acceptable. And then there's the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which may not need to be modified. I didn't read on that this week, but if there's something, because the same thing happened to me. I was Canadian coming into the country. There was 100 people that were going to be sworn in the same day. It's about 10 years ago. But they were going to be sworn in that same day. And they had us all stand up and say this pledge and the practice run. And then when they were done with that, I ran quickly to the lady and I said, you know, I sent in for a request, which was actually on the same paper of documentation, that you were allowed to have this request if you wanted to, of change of the statements that you would have to say for the Pledge of Allegiance. I thought, this is different, but I'm going to ask so that I know. Never got a letter back. Never got anything spoken to me through the whole course of materials that I had to go through. So when we were doing that practice run, I went quickly over to the lead lady that was going to lead out, and I said, I wrote in and asked for special considerations. Yeah, something like special consideration, anyway. I went to her and she said, oh yes, I know about that. She said, all you have to do is make sure your mouth is moving at the time that you're, because cameras have everything. All cameras are watching everybody that they're saying the pledge. If you don't say anything, they're going to call you aside. You're going to talk to the judge. Okay. So I have special exemption. And so we started through the Pledge of Allegiance, and that's all I had to do, is just where it said military service. And they wouldn't take me anyway at my age. Okay. So, but I was able to say that I had special exemption on lines that I didn't want to say, certain words that I felt I couldn't say as a pastor, as a church leader, as a person that teaches the love of all kinds of people, good or bad, to not wanting to go and kill people, go and train for killing people. And so they said, no problem with that. That's still in there, it's still there. It's been there very many years, because they attempted to modify it even in the early 2000s. And I think 2004 they dumped the modifications. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So it could be still out there being modified. Okay, so the third angel's message is in this book as well. So way back then, it was maybe way more important back then than it is being taught nowadays, but it's about that many pages on the third angel's message. Believe it or not, how many verses are there in the third angel's message? One, possibly two. A few verses anyway, but that many words to explain it. And then I had these books, like this one here is also, I believe, to be John Keyes' writings, which I've kept. These are in black mimeograph. You know, that's pretty old. Probably 1958, 59, 60. I got it in probably 63 and 4 when I was taking the classes at Midwest Bible College. Same idea, same drawings on the sevens that were there. So since I mentioned the sevens a few times, let me take you to some. In the Old Testament first, yes, God loves numbers, all kinds of numbers. So here's a few on the word seven. Every seventh day is a Sabbath. Every seventh year is a sabbatic year. Every 7 sabbatic year is followed by a Jubilee year. 50th year is followed by a Jubilee year. Every 7th month is specially holy, having 7 feasts. The 7th month of the year has 3 feasts. The 7 weeks between Passover and Pentecost. Pentecost means 5, the 50th day. Pentecost, 50th day. So they had the 7 Sabbaths, and then the next one following was the Pentecost week. So there's 7 weeks. And then Passover feast is 7 days long. The tabernacle feast lasted 7 days. Pardon me, this lighting in my photocopy and my eyes. At Passover, 14 lambs, twice 7, were offered daily. At Tabernacles, 14 lambs, twice 7, daily, and 70 bullocks. At Pentecost, 7 lambs were offered. Lots of 7s. So here is some from the New Testament. Now these are kind of all run together, so I'm going to have to watch it and read slowly. This book of Revelation is built around a system of 7s. 7 letters to 7 churches in the chapters 1 through 3. 7 seals and 7 trumpets. I won't read all these chapters. 7 vials, 7 candlesticks, 7 stars, 7 angels, 7 spirits, a lamb with 7 horns and 7 eyes, 7 lamps, 7 thunders, a dragon with 7 heads and 7 crowns, a lion-like beast with 7 heads, a scarlet-colored beast with 7 heads, 7 mountains, 7 kings. The number 7 is quite prestigious throughout the Bible. The Sabbath was the 7th day. The Levitical system of Old Testament was built on the cycles of 7. Jericho fell after 7 priests with 7 trumpets for 7 days marched around the walls and blew their trumpets 7 times on the 7th day. And remember the guy that had to dip himself in the Jordan 7 times? Another one on the 7th. The Bible begins with the 7th day of creation, 7 days of creation, and ends with a book with 7 about the ultimate destiny of creation. 7 is the favorite number of God's alphabet. There are 7 days in a week. There are 7 notes of music. There's 7 colors in the rainbow. It just kind of goes on. Does God love 7? He must do. That's really interesting. So let's go to the chapter that I was working on. We want to go to Revelations chapter 14. Revelations chapter 14. So we did 13 last time, and wanting to start at the beginning of chapter 14, and actually chapter 7 as well, is the story of the 144,000. So if you go to chapter 14, it begins with that. I don't want to spend much time with it, but 144,000. And when you get down to, verse 3, verse 4, maybe I'll include verse 4. These are they which were not defiled with women. This woman was a church, or churches with women. So they weren't defiled with the teachings that came out of all those. And you go back, how do you know that it's talking about that? Well, the last verse in chapter 12 says the dragon was wroth with the woman. If you read that chapter, you realize it's talking about the woman of the Old Testament and the woman of the New Testament. And it wasn't just a woman, it was the church. The church of the Old Testament brought forth a baby, right? And Mary had a baby. Then you go to the New Testament, and that baby is Jesus Christ, and he's ruling, and so the devil is really angry with that idea. So the dragon, which earlier in chapter 12 says that it's the devil and the dragon and the serpent and so on, meaning the devil. But it says the dragon was wroth with the church, with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. So you know that the church is growing and blooming. There's more people being added. The Word of God is going throughout the whole world. There's a lot of follow-up or seed from that church, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Takes both items. And that made Satan and the dragon, the devil, very, very angry. So when you're back there in that chapter 14, verse 4, these are they which were not defiled with women, churches that were teaching wrong things, for they are virgins, never been with other churches. These are they which follow the Lamb, whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits of God and of the Lamb. First fruits, there's some misconceptions about the word first fruits, so you've got to understand what they're talking about and why they're using that term. But usually when you have a garden planted or new plantings, new growths, the first things that you pick off at you do certain things with it. And if you had a firstling of an animal, you had to do a certain thing with it. It's the same first fruits that came from that animal. You were supposed to do certain things with it. And you can look up what the sacrifice was for it, or you did other things with it. But remember Mary, the mother of Jesus, that was her first child. That's interesting too, to go back and find out that she needed to go to the temple and give a sacrifice because she had born a child, because she had born a male child, because it was first child. You know, there's a number of reasons that she had to go there. They didn't pick up immediately in the middle of the night and head for Egypt. That story is so misconstrued with modern way of telling the story. It's sad. But if you read it in chronological order and think about what had to happen, he had to be circumcised on the 8th day. You don't leave town before that, right? So the 8th day he had to be sacrificed. About 33 days later, Mary had to show up at the temple. And she had to come with offerings. She went to Jerusalem, and that's where they prayed for baby Jesus and so on. A lot of things that had to fall in there. And then the wise men had to come across the country, and that they didn't do overnight, and they didn't get the king out of bed in the middle of the night, and so on. You got to think these things through and put them in chronological order. But this is these people that were the first fruits. Well, we're back here, still at the tail end of the story of the 144,000, so it's talking about them. And if you went back and looked in chapter 7, it says that they were chapter 7, I'm going to go over there for a moment, and it's verse 4 as well. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, past tense, for the 144 sealed, and there were sealed, so again were, past tense, and 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel, not of any nation in the world. This is past tense. This is Hebrew people only. Okay? Then you go on, you say, well, it talks about Judah, and it talks about Asher, and so on, and every one, so many thousands, until they got the 144,000. And then in verse 9, after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, no man could number. Hey, that includes you and I, and all the Greeks, and all the other cultures and countries of the world, that was in this great number that could not be numbered. So that's why the first fruits refer to the Hebrew people. I even see another reason for first fruits. What about when Jesus turned the tables of time, you might say, a new way of coming to the Heavenly Father through Jesus Christ? What were the first fruits? Believing, worshiping in Jesus, and baptizing in Jesus. The Hebrew people. So you still have the same people from every tribe. They were the first fruits of this new belief, this new Testament ideas. Then if you go down to verse 6, you'll notice there's another angel that flew. And you say, oh, no, wait a minute, we're looking for the third angel, and this just says another. Well, you have to wait just a little bit in the story. So you read verse 4, then you read verse, what was the first angel telling the people to do? They were supposed to, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell upon the earth, and to every nation, kindred, and tongue, and people. That was the job. That this message is being given by that angel. You go and do it. Jesus told them to do it, right? I guess we've already done that one. By internet, by radio, television, by sending missionaries, sending money. If we couldn't go by ourselves, we sent people. And this job has virtually been done to every nation. No matter when you used to think of just a few hundred nations, or even less than that, we used to have a certificate that you could win if you talked to 100 countries. It's way over that now, way over that number of countries. So this gospel has gone to every corner of the world and to every country in the world. So that angel's message is really finished. You try to work your way down a little bit and say, has this happened? Has that happened? How close to the end are we? So verse 7 tells more or less of the same thing, that to go and tell people that they need to get right with God. Verse 8, and there followed another angel. So we can only put a tag on the side there that that's number 2. But we're not real sure at this point just yet. So there was another angel said, Babylon is fallen, that great city, which he made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. She was so mixed up in her teachings that the word Babylon means confusion. They put all the religions of the world together under one system. And Babylon was the shining star of it in the past. What church did that? The Catholic Church. Put all of the teachings together in one big ball. And this is what you're supposed to learn or abide by. But you'd find in a little while, next chapter, chapter 17, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. She had daughters. The Babylon church is in chapter 17. So you couldn't go very far without getting chapter 17 involved here as well. So back here in chapter 14, verse 8, this other angel was saying that she has fallen. And all nations had been involved with that bad system, that bad type of religion. And you could go down the list. Actually, I was in Canada one time and they were coming with a big crusade. And they said, now, if anybody, all the pastors of all these churches are supposed to get involved and go there, be there, invite your people there. And then if you found somebody that you could witness to or bring to Christ, you were supposed to, especially if they were from your town, or they'd mail you these big tickets back out with people's names on that were from your city. You're supposed to meet with them and teach them about salvation and bring them to Christ, pray with them and so on. And then you turn them loose to go to any church that they might decide to go to. And I said, well, that sounds kind of strange. I mean, you got churches from that way to that way with 100 denominations. No, actually, there's 3,000 denominations in the United States. So which one are you going to send to them? Just randomly take a chance. Pick that one, pick that one. I said, I feel I'd have to give them some advice. Not force them to go anywhere, but give them some advice. So this one's a little better than that one because this reason or that reason, and move them up the ladder a little bit. And, oh no, you're not allowed to do that. I said, then I back out. I can't be part of that. Told him right out that God has a standard. There is reasons for going to this church or that church. That's what's happening here in this verse 8. It was all confusion, and the people got involved in it. It says all nations are going to get the punishment from it, but they're also going to be all confused by it. That's not the place to be. It's a bad idea, but that has happened already, right? That church has been around for 1700s, right? That confusion has started a few years after, about 300 years after Christ, confusion started. And that's in books like these and other places where they look up the old history and find out what they taught. And where did that come from? When did that first start being taught? And so on. And you see about 300, some before that. Remember when the disciples were sending people out? And you'll find a verse here in this Gospels, especially in, I guess, 1 John. They went out from us, but they're not of us. Whew, sad. And the Antichrist, some people are still looking for the Antichrist. It's here in 1 John, 2-3 times. It's mentioned in 1 John. Wow. People are looking for something that's been around all those years. Confusion. All those years. So this verse 8 has already happened. Now, we go to verse 9. And the third angel. Now if he's the third, then the previous one was 2, and the one before that was number 1. So we got the first angel, we got the second angel. I got little 1s and number 2s beside it in my Bible. Okay, so this is the third angel that followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image. We got to find out where the beast story is told and find out what he did, what it stood for, and receive the mark in his hand and in his forehead. That's in Elder Walker's book, which I didn't happen to bring up here today. But it's in Elder Walker's study of the Bible, teachings of the Bible. It's in this. This is way back there. Taught the same material 100 years ago. Still the same thing was being taught by the true believers. That there was an Antichrist out there. From 1 John and onward, there's an Antichrist out there teaching wrong things. And then this beast power is going to come up. They had it in the past because the Antichrist was there, but it's going to be revived. It's going to come again. And receive his mark. If you take his mark in your forehead or in your hands. People have explained, well, maybe you're working with your hands becomes the mark that you're accepting. Well, that's a possibility, and boy, don't do it. If some government or some church says you have to do this, and that's how you join us, that's how you belong with us, the One World Church Organization, how long has it been around? Since the end of the Second World War? Yeah, since the Second World War. When all the countries were going to make a world tribunal. I read that not more than a week ago. I still have that story that was handed out in the early 50s. 1952, possibly, that's when I was baptized, when that paper was handed out about the world courts that were being made. Well, it was about 10 years after not even 10 years after the Second World War was over. That was going to end all wars, and all countries were going to have to debate their causes in front of a world court. And when they caught the bad guys that incarcerated people and murdered people, killed people, and they captured them, they were going to put them to death. Well, you can't try them in any given country. So they tried them in a world court and put them to death. That was still functioning back there in the 40s. So it's out there, it's around. It just hasn't come up large yet where you have an international number. It's interesting, we're running into this number 666. If you think of the Rubik's Cube, people would turn those things around and twin them this way and turn them that way and turn that way. How many actual settings are there in all of that? There's so many this way, and so many that way. Very easy to get 666 combinations of settings. At least that many. Did you ever try it with four digits, A, B, C, D, and find out all of the possible places that you can put them? Start with A, or start with D, or start with B, and put the others in and rotate each end. How many is that? It's pretty easy to work it out. What if you had 666? Or 6 this way, and 6 letters of the alphabet that way? And what if you went the other way? Another 6. Or 4, 3, that you could handle easily on paper, and then you start seeing how it multiplies. Somebody could correct me with math, I guess, and say that it's the square. I'm going to get the wrong word here, I think, but it's the square. The square of the number that you're working with. To the power, that's the word I'm looking to. The 4th power or the 6th power of the number that you're dealing with. Okay, so if you have 6 positions, it's 6 to the 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 times. Okay, that's a pretty big number. Okay, so it's pretty easy to see. If you go the 3rd direction as well, you'd have that many more. Okay, so if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in your forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented day and night, tormented with fire and brimstone, in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whatsoever receiveth the mark of his name. That's kind of ends a thought of that I wanted to capture. Another place it says, burn forever and ever. Well, the fire for sure burns forever and ever. It's God's fire. What's thrown into it is another story, right? The Bible says there's going to be ashes. We're going to walk over the ashes. And so that's another story. But this one, the smoke rises forever and ever. To the end of ages, or beyond the end of the age is another way of wording it. We don't want to be in that category of verse 10 and verse 11. We don't want to be in that category. No matter how you spell it out or how you word it, how you interpret it, we just don't want to be in that group. It's all bad, right? It's got to stay out of that. So we don't want the mark. We don't want the number of his name. We don't want anything to do with that system. So verse 12 tells us a little more here. Here is the patience of the saints. If you don't take those other things, you'll be called a saint. Remember, they wrote the letters to the saints of the church of such and such. Okay? You'll be one of the saints. Here is the patience of the saints, plural. Here are they which keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Second time I read that today. We need both. We need the commandments of God. And actually, some people try to spell it as being bad for you. No, it keeps you out of a whole lot of trouble. They are good laws. James even says that too. The law of liberty keeps you out of trouble. Okay? You don't want to be in those troubles. And then, when you're doing God's will, you also want to have faith in Jesus Christ. Full faith. You have to understand what this faith is. To accept Christ as your personal Savior. To walk in that faith. Believing Jesus will keep you in the faith. Believing that Jesus is going to come and call you from the grave. And that you're going to go with the righteous. Many, many stories that could be told there on that. So, I want to stop there. But maybe one verse, two verses go with this third angel as well. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, somebody heard God talking. We had that in the Sabbath School lesson. Here it is again. Right, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Works do follow them. Some people teach you don't have to do any works. Their works follow them. Hope they're all good ones. And I looked and beheld a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like the Son of Man. Why it said like it is interesting, but it is there. We know from other scriptures it's probably going to be Jesus, because one picture shows you where he's coming with a writing on the side of his leg, on his trousers, and a vesture thing and so on, and his sickle in his hand. It says Lord of Lords, and so on. Another one is Jesus said when he left the disciples and he went up and the cloud received him, that he would return in like manner. And the angels said that. Angels. Yeah, how did they know they were angels? They had white robes on, but otherwise they looked like men. They didn't look like little girls with wings. That always get me. How did the false teachings crept in, right? Yeah, false teachings crept in. And now there's a new one around, a little fat guy that looks almost like a little piggy. Valentine's Day, right? Yeah, supposedly an angel, I guess, with little wings and little chubby fat baby, maybe. Easter. They're false teachings. And when Jesus went to heaven, he said he would, or the angel said he would return in like manner. So they're looking for Jesus, that he would be coming back in a cloud or on a cloud. And this verse is saying the same thing, right? And here he's got, and having in his hand a golden crown. I've seen these pictures where people have a person on a horse and he's holding this golden crown. And in his hand a sharp sickle to reap the world. And then number 4, the angel starts. So we would sometime want to go through number 3 and number 4 and what happens with there. Or of course you could always read them at home and find out what it's about. But we're not far into the third angel's message, are we? If our day is the way it is, we've got enough of a mess that we could say, yeah, we're in the third angel's message. We're in that time frame. Some of them we look at and say, well, it hasn't quite happened yet. Because we can look at other places where you can't buy and sell. If you don't have the mark of his name, where's that? That's, you know me, it's always got to be the side of the page that I remember. It's the 666. Well, I thought I was going to land on it quicker than that. Nope, not finding it that fast. I usually have it written out in pretty big letters.
That's chapter 13, at the end of the chapter.
At the end of 13, yeah, end of 13. I read that last week, yeah. Okay. I got 666 in red letters. It's the end of the last chapter. So that would be very valid then in this chapter, right? So we're warned not to take those numbers and not to be involved in that system. But that hasn't happened yet. But there is always a possibility of it changing. What's happening right now in Oklahoma? You have to get a new driver's license because of the number system. Everybody's going to have a different type of driver's license. Everybody has to have it for identification. Interesting. Keep your eyes open. Pray always. Okay. May God bless you.